The Silent Beginning. Mark Thompson was 62 years old when he faced a truth that many fear but few speak of: growing old alone. His house, once filled with laughter, footsteps, and the daily chaos of family life, now stood still, eerily silent. Every tick of the clock echoed through the empty rooms, a haunting reminder of the life that had slowly unraveled. For decades, Mark had lived the archetypal American dream. He worked diligently for a public service agency, built a stable career, married his beloved Anne, and raised two wonderful children, Adam and Eva. Together, they made a home full of warmth, comfort, and love. Birthdays, holidays, and quiet Sunday mornings were once a vibrant part of his daily life. But life, as it often does, changed. First, the children grew up, moved away, and started their own families. Then Anne, after years of battling illness, passed away. Suddenly, Mark found himself retired, widowed, and isolated in a house that had grown far too large for one man. The walls that once echoed with family conversations now whispered only emptiness. There were moments when the silence felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. The absence of his wife was like an open wound that never truly healed. The phone calls from his children, though loving, became less frequent, filled with quick reassurances and hurried voices juggling work and their own growing responsibilities. One evening, as Mark sat alone on his sofa, the loneliness felt unbearable. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only companion in the room. He reached for his phone and stared at the screen, contemplating whether to call Adam or Eva, but he hesitated. He didn't want to interrupt their busy lives with his emptiness. Instead, he closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "You're fine, Mark. You've made it this far, you can handle it." But even as the words left his lips, a tear traced down his cheek, betraying the truth he was trying so hard to deny. The emptiness was real. The loneliness was consuming. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Mark felt the weight of time pressing down on him. He was not afraid of aging, but of aging without companionship, without someone to share the remaining pages of his life story. The thought that there might never be anyone sitting across the dinner table again was a chilling one. And yet, deep within, a small voice whispered, "This is not the end. There is still life ahead, but you must find a way to live it." To the conversation that changed everything. A few days after that heavy evening, Mark found himself standing in front of the window, coffee cup in hand, watching the morning sun climb slowly over the rooftops. The golden beams spilled into his living room, warming the old wooden floor beneath his feet. Yet despite the warmth outside, there was a persistent chill inside his chest that the sun couldn't reach. The phone rang again, slicing through the silence. This time, it wasn't his children. It was Mr. Lewis, his neighbor. "Morning, Mark. Got time for a little walk? The air's good today." Mark hesitated for a second before answering, "Sure, give me 5 minutes." As they strolled through the nearby park, a quiet understanding hung between them. Both men were aging, both had buried their wives, both watched their children slip further into their own busy lives. The world they had once known was fading, replaced by something unfamiliar and unsettling. Finally, Mr. Lewis spoke the words that had been swirling around in Mark's mind for weeks. "Mark, you and I saw we need to face it. We've reached that chapter of life where being alone might not just be occasional. It might be permanent. Have you thought about what comes next if you truly end up alone?" Mark let out a long sigh, his breath visible in the cool air. "Every day, and it terrifies me. And it—" Mr. Lewis nodded slowly. "Me too, but I've been reading, talking to people. There are things we can do, Mark. We're not powerless. We just need to plan." As they continued walking, Mr. Lewis began to list the essentials of aging alone, a conversation that would plant seeds in Mark's heart and eventually change his entire outlook. "First and foremost, we must secure our finances," Mr. Lewis began. "You've got your retirement fund, yes, but unexpected medical bills, home repairs, or even assisted living costs can drain savings fast. Have you sat down and really calculated what you'll need?" Mark shook his head. "Not in detail. I always assumed I had enough, but maybe I need to be more honest with myself." "Exactly," Mr. Lewis replied. "Next, our health. We can't control everything, but we can delay many issues. Exercise daily, eat well, and keep our minds busy. Isolation breeds decay, both mental and physical. If we stop moving, we fade faster than we should. Mark was listening intently now. The words felt like a wake-up call. And there's more, Mark. We need social connections, even if we can't always rely on family. Community groups, hobby circles, volunteer work, anything to stay engaged. You sit in this house too much, my friend. You need to find people. Mark smiled faintly. You make it sound simple. It isn't, Mr. Lewis admitted, but doing nothing is much harder. They paused under a large oak tree. The leaves above them were beginning to turn, whispering the arrival of autumn, nature's own reminder of time passing. Mark gazed at the swirling leaves and spoke softly. I don't want to just sit here and wait for the end, Lewis. I want to live. Really live. That's the spirit, my friend. That's exactly what we're talking about. You have more control than you think. That conversation ignited something in Mark. The very next morning, he pulled out old financial documents, scribbling notes and building spreadsheets. He calculated potential expenses, researched medical insurance options, and contacted his financial advisor for a thorough review. But it didn't stop there. Within days, he forced himself into new routines. Morning walks in the park, signing up for a chess club at the community center, and attending a weekly Tai Chi class. At first, every step outside his door felt like dragging heavy chains. The inertia of loneliness was strong, but the desire to fight it was stronger. Strangers became acquaintances. Acquaintances slowly became friends. He noticed the fog in his mind starting to clear. The nights grew slightly less hollow. His appetite returned. Even his reflection in the mirror seemed different, still aged, but with a spark that had been missing for too long. And yet, despite these changes, the shadows of solitude still lingered. When the evenings fell silent, Mark couldn't help but feel a gnawing emptiness. He longed for more, a deeper connection, someone to share simple moments with. He missed the intimacy of daily companionship, sharing meals, discussing trivial things, or even sitting together in silence. And deep inside, Mark knew that preparing financially and staying active was only part of the battle. The heart, too, needed care. To the unexpected companion. Several months passed since Mark and Mr. Lewis had that sobering conversation in the park. During this time, Mark's days found a new rhythm. Morning walks, afternoon chess games at the community center, and quiet evenings with books or classic films. Life felt lighter, even if the empty spaces within his heart still whispered at night. One autumn afternoon, while attending a group cooking class offered at the senior center, a new program designed to bring older residents together, Mark met someone who would quietly alter the course of his days. Her name was Linda Brown. She was in her early 60s, her hair a soft silver that framed her face like moonlight. There was something warm and inviting about her presence, a calm voice, a radiant smile, and an easy grace in the way she moved through the room. Mark first noticed her while the instructor was explaining how to prepare a simple roasted chicken recipe. Linda laughed gently when she accidentally dropped a sprig of rosemary onto the counter. Their eyes met. That small moment, unremarkable on the surface, somehow made Mark feel as though a forgotten part of his soul had stirred awake. At the end of the session, as people packed up their things, Mark found the courage to approach her. That was a lot of rosemary for just one chicken, he teased, his voice carrying a nervous chuckle. Linda laughed, her eyes twinkling. Well, at least the kitchen smells like an herb garden now. I suppose I've always been better at eating than cooking. The ice broke easily between them. They chatted casually, discovering they shared more than just culinary struggles. Both had grown children who lived out of state. Both had lost their spouses several years earlier. Both were learning how to rebuild their lives one careful step at a time. Over the next few weeks, Mark and Linda crossed paths again, at Tai Chi class, in the library, at Sunday afternoon game socials. What started as occasional small talk slowly deepened into longer conversations about books, music, family, and the strange, bittersweet reality of aging. One evening, after a community center movie night, Linda surprised Mark with a simple invitation. "Would you like to grab coffee with me tomorrow morning?" Mark hesitated only for a second before replying, "I'd like that very much." The coffee shop they visited the next morning was small but cozy, its windows fogged slightly from the cool weather outside. They sat across from each other, cups in hand, and spoke with an ease neither had felt in a long time. Linda talked about her passion for gardening. Mark shared his interest in chess and woodworking. Time seemed to dissolve as they lost themselves in conversation. As days turned into weeks, the companionship between them blossomed into a beautiful routine. They grocery shopped together, cooked simple meals side by side, walked in the park holding hands as the leaves changed from green to gold. Their bond wasn't youthful romance, it was something richer, something built on shared wounds, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding of life's fragility. For the first time in years, Mark no longer dreaded evenings. The laughter echoing through his house, the clinking of plates in the kitchen, and the gentle conversation before bedtime brought warmth back into rooms that had felt cold for so long. One night, sitting on the porch under a quilt of stars, Linda reached over and softly took Mark's hand. "I didn't think I'd find someone again," she whispered. "Neither did I," Mark replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm grateful we did." They sat in comfortable silence, simply being present for each other. A quiet, steady companionship that required no grand declarations, only the shared understanding that life, even with its losses, still held unexpected gifts. For the test of loss. For the first time in years, Mark felt anchored again. Linda's presence breathed warmth into the emptiness that once haunted his home. The days glided by like gentle waves, morning walks, shared meals, quiet evenings filled with conversation and soft laughter. Life had found a gentle rhythm, but as Mark would soon learn, life has a way of testing even the most fragile happiness. One chilly morning in early spring, as Mark prepared their usual breakfast, his phone rang. Seeing Adam's name on the screen, Mark smiled and answered cheerfully. "Good morning, son." But Adam's voice was tight with anxiety. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Linda, she's been in a car accident. She's in the ICU. It's serious." The words punched the breath from Mark's lungs. His knees buckled slightly, and he gripped the counter to steady himself. "Where is she?" His voice trembled. Adam quickly gave him the hospital's name and offered to come pick him up. Within half an hour, father and son were rushing through the sterile corridors of the emergency ward. The sight of Linda behind the glass doors, pale, frail, tubes snaking around her body, nearly broke Mark. His chest tightened as if a heavy stone had been placed upon it. The doctor met them with somber eyes. "Her injuries are extensive," he explained gently. "We're doing everything we can, but you should prepare for the worst." Mark felt numb. His legs trembled beneath him as Adam helped him sit. Hours dragged by, each minute an agony of helplessness. The monitors beeped in cruel rhythm, reminding them of the fragile thread holding Linda to this world. When Linda briefly regained consciousness, Mark rushed to her side. He gently grasped her cool, frail hand, tears streaming down his face. "Linda, it's me. I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus on him. A faint tear traced down her cheek. In the weakest whisper, barely audible, she managed to say, "Mark, live well." Then her hand slipped from his, and the monitors fell into a long, flat tone. The medical staff moved quickly, but there was nothing more to be done. Linda was gone. The grief that followed was unlike anything Mark had ever experienced. He returned to the assisted living facility, but the world felt grayer, dimmer, as if all the colors had drained from his life. The vibrant companionship they had built together evaporated, leaving behind a cavernous silence. Adam and Eva visited frequently, bringing the grandchildren, offering comfort, but nothing could quite fill the void. Mark would sit in his room, gazing out the window, his heart hollow and his eyes glassy with unshed tears. At night, sleep evaded him. The ache in his chest was constant. He would replay moments with Linda like fragile film reels in his mind. The way she smiled when they cooked, her soft voice during evening chats, her fingers brushing his hand as they walked through the park. One morning, as Mark sat in the courtyard staring at the trees, a new resident arrived, an elderly man with hunched shoulders and uncertain eyes. The man reminded Mark of himself months earlier, lost, isolated, uncertain of this new chapter. Summoning strength from the depths of his grief, Mark walked over, gently placing a hand on the man's shoulder. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked softly. The man nodded wordlessly, grateful for the simple gesture. In that moment, Mark felt something shift inside him. Linda's final words echoed in his mind, "Live well." He realized that while grief would never fully vanish, it didn't have to consume him. By offering kindness to others facing similar loneliness, Mark found a quiet sense of healing. His pain became a bridge, not a wall. The seasons changed. Mark slowly rebuilt his days, not with denial, but with acceptance. He continued attending Tai Chi classes, played chess with new friends, and volunteered at the community center, gently guiding other newcomers who were walking the same difficult path. Linda was gone, but her love remained, woven into the fabric of Mark's soul. And though the ache never disappeared completely, gratitude softened its edges. He had survived the test of loss, and in doing so discovered the quiet, powerful resilience of the human heart. The wisdom of growing old months passed after Linda's departure. The days carried a different weight now, not as heavy as the first weeks of loss, but still wrapped in a quiet melancholy. Mark's heart still ached, but it was no longer sharp. It was a steady, dull throb, like an old wound that weather tells you is still there. He continued his routines, Tai Chi at sunrise, meals with his small circle of friends, the occasional chess tournament, and his afternoon walks in the garden. Every morning, Mark woke with the same silent pledge: live well. It was Linda's gift, and he carried it like a compass. But over time, something remarkable began to unfold. In his grief, Mark had learned to see life with a new kind of clarity, a wisdom that only years and the weight of loss could cultivate. He saw how fragile each moment was, how fleeting time could be. And so, he cherished the simple things others often overlooked. A conversation with a fellow resident became not just idle chit-chat, but a moment of genuine connection. A warm cup of tea on a chilly afternoon wasn't just a beverage, it was comfort. The sound of children laughing during family visits wasn't just noise, it was life affirming itself. One afternoon, sitting beneath a sprawling oak tree in the facility's courtyard, Mark found himself deep in thought as the golden autumn leaves fluttered to the ground. The old man who once feared aging alone was now at peace with his solitude. He realized that growing old wasn't about accumulating regrets or dwelling on what was lost. It was about embracing what remained, the beauty of small joys, the power of resilience, and the grace to accept impermanence. In youth, he had measured success in titles, paychecks, and the size of his home. Now he measured it by peace of mind, laughter shared with friends, the warmth of family visits, and the stillness of watching the sun rise. There were nights when loneliness still whispered, but Mark no longer fought it. He acknowledged its presence, like an old familiar guest who visited from time to time, but it no longer held dominion over him. The younger residents often approached him for advice, sensing his quiet strength. "Mr. Thompson, how do you manage to stay so positive?" Mark would smile gently. "You learn," he'd say, "that life is much shorter than you think, even when it feels long. And the secret is simple. Don't waste your days waiting for things you can control. Love who you can while you can. Forgive quickly. Find joy in small things, and when loss visits you, as it surely will, let yourself grieve. But don't forget to keep living." His words weren't rehearsed. They were carved from experience, softened by heartbreak, and polished by acceptance. That winter, as snow quietly blanketed the garden, Mark sat by the window, sipping tea. The snow reminded him of life itself, soft, beautiful, yet fleeting. Each snowflake, like each moment, was unique and unrepeatable. As he gazed out, a faint smile played on his lips. He whispered softly to himself, "Thank you, Linda." For even in her absence, Linda continued to give him strength. He had faced loneliness, he had endured grief. But in the end, he had found something greater, a peace born not from what he lost, but from all that he still carried in his heart. Aging wasn't a curse, he now understood. It was a quiet kind of wisdom,